Okay, I think this, there. So this is a photo of Monte Bernardi. This photo is probably taken in the early 90s. It's a very historical property found in 1085. And the photo, or this angle of photo is very famous. There was a photo even from the 60s of a similar view, and it was a symbol of Chianti Classico in that era. And you can still find that image painted in the walls of banks. This one I took last week with the fall colors. Such a beautiful time right now, but no snow.
That way.
Hi, Katja. Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good.
So, yeah, I can unpause that. How do I unpause it?
No, it's good.
Okay.
If you want, we can stay on and go through it.
Sure. I have, this is the famous map of Chianti Classico that Masnaghetti made. And here, this blue area, light blue area is Panzano. And we're right here. We're really in the center.
Yeah. So you're very close to Rada, no?
Yeah. Rada is the green part here. Yeah. We're our next door neighbor up right here is Fontodi, right there. Oh. And this is the curve that goes to Rada. This is goes to Rada, down goes to Castellina, and going back goes to Panzano and then Greve. This curve is called the belly button of Chianti Classico, supposedly exactly the center.
Seriously?
Yeah. But what I noticed and thought when I first moved there is being in the center here, you have some of the highest altitude, steepest slopes, rockiest soils, big drop in temperature at night. And when I came, I felt like a lot of the producers didn't understand or appreciate the assets that part of Chianti Classico could give them, you know? And to me, I felt like we could make very perfumed, aromatic, and age-worthy Chianti Classicos from the center part. And that includes Rada, Lamale, parts of Gaioli, parts of Castellina, you know, the higher altitude, rockier parts. I feel like they were kind of hiding the beauty and the elegance. And so my goal from day one was to kind of tease that out and emphasize it, not hide it. Because I think all of Tuscany can make big, powerful Sangiovese if they want to, but it's much harder to make perfumed, aromatic, and elegant Sangiovese and Chianti Classico.
Now, since we're on this point, I wanted to wait. I spent in 1992 4 months in Florence to learn Italian.
Wow, not a good year for grapes in our area.
Yeah, so what I've done actually back then, I stayed quite often. Florence was so hot, so we always went up to Fiesole and tasted basically all the wines up there and enjoyed this little wind which came in. That was able to taste quite a bit. And I noticed also in that time, that was the era when things changed towards Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot.
Yeah. 92.
And also heavily oaking.
Yes, yeah.
And also Chianti as a style itself changed because many people, all of a sudden, Galestro was booming.
Yeah.
And no one used white grapes anymore.
That's our Galestro. Oh, you mean Galestro, the white wine?
Yeah,
or Galestro, the soil?
Well, both.
Yeah, this is our soil we call Galestro. It's our purple-brown shale. But yeah, Galestro, the white wine. And if you read the Chianti Classico book from Bill Nesto and Fran Savino, they talk about how the white grape, Malvasia, was the most popular grape planted before Sangiovese, and then Canaiolo, and then Sangiovese. But Sangiovese has been a very long time, but it's very interesting. Also, we think that the Mezzadria kind of mixed planting was kind of the traditional way to plant. And that was true of that sharecropping era. But before that, they actually had specialized vineyards and only vineyards. And then they went to kind of the Mezzadria planting to actually maximize crop and planting other things. This is an old book from the Mezzadria area where the Bonsegni family owned Monte Bernardi, but it owned about 13 other farms in the area, including Candiale, Le Cincole, Il Palagio,
Potatoes.
Montigliani. Yeah, potatoes, fava, fagioli, avena. You had lupins, chickpeas, and then of course you had animals too. You had the cows, the pigs, the sheep, the geese, and what I try to make people understand is that in before we changed over to that modern era, we really, we had all this great old farming knowledge, this that that was honed over years and years in our area, like tying with the shoots of the salici, the willow shoots, or wrapping the vines at the top like we do. I think I have a picture here. We don't hedge trim, we only wrap. And originally I started bringing that back because I knew I would keep a better balanced canopy and get airflow and reduce disease pressure and pest pressure. But I think it's something that's more important than that. And we learned with years of doing it that way that we got a bigger advantage, which was that when you hedge trim, you create all the lateral shoots, you get all the feminine lateral shoots coming out, and then the vine has to mature all of that green shoot material into brown wood, just like the skins and the seeds and the stems. And so essentially you're artificially delaying the maturation of the bunch. And so by wrapping like they used to do, we get much better quality tannins, we get lower sugar and higher acidity.
So you just drop also the shoots on top?
We wrap them, yeah. We call it braiding in Italian, intracciare. We wrap them. We never cut. We never cut. Yeah. You can cut when the tip has stopped growing, so all the new growth comes from the tip. But if you cut it before that, then the side buds come out, and then that creates a lot of density in your canopy, and then you lose kind of the airflow and the light inception, but then you also give the vine a lot more wood to mature. So for me, this is one of the secrets to our wines and keeping elegance and balance is that old practice. And if you ask an old farmer why they didn't cut or, with scissors or a knife, it would have saved them time. They would say, well, then the bunches wouldn't ripen. So they knew that wrapping was important. They didn't maybe understand the tannin and the reasons, but they knew they didn't like the wine as much. So to me, that's a lost art. And to me, it's related to a lot of the modern decisions that we make today. Like when I started, I used to remove this wing bunch because you can see it's less ripe than the main bunch. But after about 4 years, I was asking myself, why was I doing that? Because I was only, if I didn't drop anything, wings, bunches, I was only getting about 5,000 bottles to the hectare, because of our rocky, poor soils. So we stopped green pruning in 2008. And now I look at this as a huge advantage, because if my main bunch is dark berry fruit, like blackberry or black cherry or plum, this is going to be 1 or 2 degrees of maturation behind, and it's going to give me more complexity. And it's only 1/5 of the total bunch, but I think there's that mentality of selecting the best that in the end often can select out complexity and also lead to overripeness, low acidity, pruny, jammy qualities. So it's same related when you hedge trim, you're more likely to remove the leaves over your bunches. And for me, I want dapple light. I want shade and sun splotches on my bunches. If I have all sun, I'm going to get more likely a jammy, kind of low acid fruit. If I have all shaded, it's going to be more herbaceous and less less ripe. So by just wrapping them like they are here as well, we keep a really nice natural balance. I don't shoot thin, I don't leaf pluck, and so I get a big advantage in that sense. But I can also pick earlier, and I always use 100% of our pressing. So we basket press everything, even our rosé, and then we press like an old farmer would. There's not an ounce of humidity that gets delivered to the distillery. For me, that's a lost art as well, because the pressings give length, ageability, and longevity. So, or savoriness, sorry. So to me, this is super, it's a lost art really. And it all comes back to how the choices you make in the vineyard, the wrong rootstock or hedge trimming or dropping too much fruit leads to these lack of balance and elegance, and that then is much harder to achieve in the winery. So you see, we also use stems. We do long post maceration because I love our material that we're using. So Retromarcia might have 60, even 90 days post maceration after fermentation, and it could have from anywhere from 20 to 80% stems in it. But we've never filtered, we've never added a product to any of our estate wines that we make. We try to find a natural way to deacidify, like stems, or use the long maceration to soften the structure of the aggressive tannic structure that we get in Sangiovese in our area.
So you sound almost like, because I had a long talk with Christian Cheetah from Austria,
Cheater.
who is very much into natural winemaking, but he doesn't necessarily like the term.
Yeah, I would fall in the same camp.
Yeah, because
I always tell our sales reps not to use that term, or no, my word, my explanation is, this is my 18th year that I made wine at Monte Bernardi, and to me, it's very short-sighted to use a single word to describe yourself as a producer. So I didn't want to use organic, biodynamic, or natural, because I feel like those words lose their significance very quickly. So I say you can use them in as a reason, to describe why the wines taste like they do, but please don't ever use them as the single way you describe us, because I think that's very short term. Brenna Quigley, she does the soil science kind of stuff. She was in Chianti Classico. This is kind of neat. So she went around and tried to classify all the soils that she found in Chianti Classico. You've got alluvium, tufa, galestro, Albarese, and then Pietraforte. You've got very hard, friable, unconsolidated, non-calcareous to strongly calcareous. The most strong calcareous and hardest stone is found at Monte Bernardi. It's this one here called Pietraforte. And that's where our Saietta single vineyard comes from, but it's also makes up about 20% of the Retromarcia. We're the only producer in Panzano that has it.
what soil is that?
We call it Pietraforte. It's a calcareous sandstone with quartz and calcium carbonate veining. And it's the strongest calcareous soil that we know of in Chianti Classico.
Is it where Retromarcia is grown onto?
It has all three of our soils. So Retromarcia is 70% Galestro, 20% Pietraforte, and about 10% Albarese limestone. But sandstone is more calcareous than the Albarese limestone.
It's more compressed, no?
Yeah, it's a very, very hard stone, and also very reflective, whereas Galestro is not very reflective. So you see a big difference between the Sangiovese on the Galestro and the Pietraforte. Retromarcia has a huge advantage in that it comes from all three soil types in all of our exposures. So east, south, and west. So it gets a lot of different kind of aspects and spectrums of flavor because of that, which is really nice. Whereas our reservas are single vineyard. So Saeta is the Pietroforte on the sandstone, and Monte Bernardi Reserva is a single vineyard on the Galestro. So. We use mainly Botti Grande for our Chianti Classicos. I like to give more time in larger format to bring out the finesse and the elegance. I find that if I put Sangiovese in small barrels, I get fruitiness out very quickly, but the structure is very crude and raw for quite a long time. And that would give, I think, a winemaker more of a kind of pressure to maybe fine it or to add a softening grape variety. We also use large cement, non-glass lined as well. But Retro Marcia will spend on average about 18 months in small, medium, and large Botti. And then the Reservas spend about 2 years in big Botti. This one's 5,800 liter Stockinger. We have also a bunch of 3,000 liter Stockinger barrels for the Reservas. This is another old practice we brought back. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but in our area, this was the standard way to prepare your vine poles, to char them as opposed to dipping them in chemicals. It makes the poles last a lot longer than the chemically dipped ones. So it's a natural way to make them last a lot longer.
Sorry, I've lost you a little bit because the internet in our office on the Wi-Fi is a nightmare.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I was just showing you another old practice that we do, which is the charring of the tips of the chestnut poles for the vine poles. It's an old practice that used to be standard, but has kind of faded out, like the willow shoots that we do. It lasts much longer than the chemically dipped ones.
Oh, I noticed from Europe, they all do that, no?
Well, they used to. Here, it's very hard to find anymore. Now, the standard is copper dipped in our area, or copper pressure treated, but that really doesn't last very long. Once it's soaked in the soil for a little bit, it leaches out, and they have less than 10-year lifespan. Those copper treated ones in the ground. So these are unpalatable for the parasites that eat the wood because it's so thickly charred, and so it works really well. So, yeah.
Now, in terms of the Retro Marcia, you use Sangiovese.
Yeah, it's 100% Sangiovese. It's been 100% Sangiovese since 2010. There was a little bit of other varieties from 2006 to 2009 when we were purchasing grapes and wine from Panzano producers as we were waiting for other vineyards of ours to come into production. So it wasn't a choice. We didn't purposely want other varieties in it, but it was kind of a requirement to work with these two growers from Panzano. So.
And what do you do with the whites after?
The which one? Sorry.
The white wines.
Not the white wine. We have white grapes blended in the old vineyards. So we have Sangiovese, Canaiolo, Malvasia, and Trebbiano in the old vineyards. What we do is for Saeta, we use only Sangiovese for the Reserva. And then in the Monte Bernardi, which is on the Galestro, we do Sangiovese Canaiolo. And in the old vineyards, we either make Rosato with it, with Sangiovese, Canaiolo, Malvasia, Trebbiano, or I just started making Trebbiano as well. So pure Trebbiano, white, barrel fermented in used oak, like our Rosato. So more kind of savory, and it comes out a year later, over a year later. So.
And what is your philosophy in Retromarcia? I think I read about it, but I just, sometimes reading one profile and hearing it from the winemaker can be slightly different.
Yeah, I think it symbolizes the whole philosophy of the state, which is just, to express that finesse and elegance, using, neutral, larger oak barrels and cement, and working well in the vineyard to pick with, higher acidity and better quality tannins. So my general idea is that we're returning back to Sangiovese di una volta, we would say, and that's what Retromarcia means. The Sangiovese when it was in a pure, unadulterated kind of fashion is the way I think about it. So,
in your opinion, what would be another interesting example outside of your winery of that?
well, a big influences on me were Le Trame from Giovanna Morganti and Montevertine. Those were bigger influences on me. They were both using Botti Grande and, not green pruning and aging and making wine in a very unadulterated way. And I think those had huge impressions on me. I didn't always understand why I liked them. And over the years, I realized that it kind of gave me more confidence to do what I wanted to do as I learned more and more about what they were doing. So it's they definitely were the biggest influences on me. But things like having really nice Barolos and Barbarescos and wines from Montalcino, that I realized that Botti Grande was really important for bringing out freshness and elegance. My favorite Montalcino producers used bigger barrels and had a freshness and elegance that the modern producers didn't have. And I also remember drinking Riesling in the Rheingau out of, an 80-year-old barrel and like being completely floored at the minerality and the purity and the fact that you would never know it was in an oak barrel. That really made a huge impression on me. So yeah, I think working in Australia and having to like mix tannins in buckets and using all kinds of grape varieties just pushed me into this kind of more quote unquote natural way, because I feel like when you use technology and products, you're kind of shaving away authenticity and typicity. And so my goal is just to exhibit the purity of our place, really. So it definitely wasn't a political choice. I didn't want to drink any of that stuff, that I had to mix in buckets. But I also felt like it was best for the purity and the quality of what I was trying to achieve.
But you make a Reserva too, no?
Yeah, 2 Reservas. Yeah, Monte Bernardi Reserva, which is 95 Sangiovese and 5% Canaiolo, and it's on the classic Galestro soils, 2 years in Botti Grande, and then the Saetta Reserva, which comes from the Pietroforte sandstone that we talked about.
And the Retromarcia, where does this come from? All the blue?
Retromarcia comes from all 3 soil types. So you've got Pietroforte and Galestro, Pietroforte and Galestro, and then you've got Albarese and Galestro. So
using the younger wines a little bit. I mean, younger for your terms.
Yeah, younger for sure. For me, I have Saetta and Monte Bernardi are now 52 years old, the vineyards. And Retromarcia averages the youngest is 10 and the oldest is 20 for Retromarcia vineyards. You see all this white surrounding the vineyards is our own oak forest. So we have no direct contact with any neighbors. And the biggest river of the area, which is not very big, called the Pesa, also borders about 50% of the property. We just recently in 2018 bought more vineyards up here above Panzano. So when you go to Dario the Butcher and then you go up towards Volpaia, yeah, we bought another 10 hectares here. And those we have about 9 hectares of roughly 20-year-old vineyards. And We also got a 1 hectare of 1933-year-old vineyards, field blend Chianti Classico, which will be coming out next year, which is very exciting. So, but yeah, now we started with 5 hectares in 2003, and then we planted our own vineyard, our land, and got up to 10 hectares. I think around 2008 was our last vineyard that we planted. And then in 2011 to 2018, we had 15 hectares when we took over our neighbor. And then in 2018, we took another 10. So now we're 25 hectares, all in Panzano. All of our vineyards are farmed in-house by us. We don't use any external teams. We do everything by hand except for plowing and spraying. And yeah, we like the old practices.
So what do you like to eat with your wines?
I like to eat the classic kind of things, of course, the bistecca and the popozo. This is an interesting thing. This is the kind of like brings it all together for me. I tell people that, when we move from the old traditions to the new ones, we lost the connection to the food of our area, because our area is really an area of cucina povera food. We ate the offcuts of the animals. If you see Dario's film about, the Netflix chef's table, he says he didn't have a bistec until he was 20. Basically the cow was there for the leather industry, and the meat was a byproduct, and the best cuts got sold away to wealthier people. And so the food of our area is really cucina povera food. And I think our wines need to be made to reflect that still, because it makes them more special and it enhances the food of the area. So all those great classic dishes that are slow cooked, off cut, really are more soulful and require more skill, are the kind of things that I love to have with our wines.
We're coming.
Anytime. More than welcome. We would very much enjoy that.
We'll take you up on that. Don't worry about that.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure. I'm
What
sure
is
Dario would
something
like that too.
you'd like to know for someone who is new into wine, or who needs, what do they need to know in 1 or 2 sentences about Monte Bernardi, and especially the Retromarcia?
What do they need to know? I think that we are in the heart of Chianti Classico in Panzano, and we come from an area that's very special, with this high altitude and the steep slopes and the rocky soils, and it represents a very small part of Chianti Classico and Tuscany, and we can have extremely beautiful, perfumed, aromatic, and elegant wines there. And Chianti Classico is such a large region. It's 20,000 acres of vineyards. I don't know why I can't. 20,000 acres, and only this small part in the center can make these beautiful aromatic and elegant wines. And Monte Bernardi's goal is to really be one of the farms that people think of as trying to bring back that special cucina povera elegance and prettiness known for that area.
Cucina povera is basically the poor man's kitchen, right?
Yeah, exactly. The offcuts, the
kitchen.
slow cooked, the making something great out of the cheaper cuts and things like that, and not cutting away everything to get to something very small, like even we were talking about, the old farmers would cry when you would drop the wings or the bunches, because they spent all this time farming, and the idea of dropping it was just such a sad idea to them. And I think we need to kind of bring that back and use all the pressings and the whole bunch, and kind of learn our craft better. And the way sorting tables and dropping fruit, to me, is not very impressive. I think when you the best winemakers are ones who can understand how to grow their grapes and use everything and make something very special. So that's kind of, I think, an old world mentality and an old farmer mentality is to use everything and to understand every aspect so well that you can express it very well without magic and makeup.
So you're saying also they're working with defects.
Yeah. I mean, you can call like less ripe grapes a defect, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it makes it more, like I said, more complex and more unique. You know, when we have all these intense flavors, they're impressive, but they can be one-dimensional and not evolve and not change. And so, to me, it's a lost art that we need to kind of rediscover. And I think when people say, "Oh, are things changing a lot with climate change?" I say, "Yeah, we're getting more heavy days of rain and more sunny days." But in the end, a lot of the changes that we see in wine in my area, I can only speak from my area, are from wrong choices in rootstock, undercropping, and poor vineyard management. You know, a lot of the choices I see are related to those kind of decisions. And it's not surprising when you think that you come from an era like this where you had all this great knowledge, and then all these new owners came in and they had zero agricultural background. So they hired consultants, and often the consultants came from Valpolicella or Barolo or Bordeaux, and they had no intimate knowledge with how to grow Sangiovese and what clones and what rootstocks. So they changed everything, and all those decisions followed all the way through to the winery. And for many years, I think the results were pleasing. But now, with the change in climate, the contrast is more stark and more evident.
So how much clusters do you use?
We don't do any whole clusters. I do use stems, but what I do is I destem, crush, and add stems back immediately.
Okay,
Because
how much percent of stems do you use in the Retromarcia, for instance?
it'll vary. So in a cool year where I have higher acid and lower natural tannins from less sun exposure, I could get up to 70%, 80%. In a warmer year, like 2017 or 2011, it might be as low as 20%, because I have a lot of natural tannin from the sun exposure and I have a lower acidity from the warmer year. So yeah, varies from 20 to maybe 70, 80%. It can vary.
So 20% you're adding in hotter years and 70% in warmer years?
In cooler years. Cooler years, more stems, and warmer years, less stems.
Okay.
Yeah. Because the stems act as a natural deacidifier in cool years with all the potassium. Mm-hmm. And I like to give the natural tannins as well from that, and longer maceration after fermentation as well. So yeah, that's for me, it's more, I think of it like a cook and try to, it's totally instinctual. It's not, I don't know what the alcohol, acidity, anything is of my wine until Chianti Classico comes a year or 2 years later to sample it and tell me if it passes or not. I don't know, because to me, it's not something that I have any intention of manipulating. So to me, that it's very important to develop an instinct that you can kind of use to decide when to pick, to decide how many stems to use, to decide how long you macerate for. Because if you rely on numbers, I think you make more mistakes than you make right decisions.
Yeah. Speaking of numbers, and I know this is a question I'm often allergic to, but you get it asked all the time.
Sure.
More from one camp than the other.
Sure.
How do you end up with sulfuring at the end?
So our total sulfurs in the end are about 22 parts, 22 milligrams per liter. Mm-hmm. Our frees are about 10. So we're definitely in the natural camp, but not, like I said, it's not a political choice. It was an evolution of my winemaking over the years. When I started, I sulfured at the crusher, and I forced malolactic by heating the room. We never added malolactic bugs. We've never added yeast, but I forced the malo to happen quicker. And so that was another addition of sulfur. Now I don't add to the crusher, and I don't force the heating because I made trials and realized that the quality was better if I didn't force. So now we went from totals of around 45, 60 maybe at the highest. And just by a natural evolution of my winemaking taste, we've now arrived at low 20s. And at least since 2010, it's been, or 2011, it's been that low, and never had any problems shipping the wine around the world, never had anyone return a bottle saying that something went wrong. So I kind of think now it's maybe a crutch a little bit to have it too high, and we just don't, we need to understand what's truly necessary. And of course, when you have more acidity, you can probably get away with lower levels. I certainly don't want to arrive at zero. I mean, that's not a goal of mine. If someday I arrive there, it will be again, just because I'm convinced the wines are better that way. But it's not a goal that I'm seeking. So what we do is, if most of the wines we make do not, they go from fermentation, pressing into barrel, and they don't get touched until 1 month before bottling, and then they get 1 sulfur dose, because I like the fine yeast, long lees contact.
How long does it stay on the lees before you fill the Retromarcia?
So Retromarcia on average is 18 months. So usually, I would say roughly, because we do long post maceration. So from January to minimum of 12 months on the lees. And then if I have to move the wine for logistic reasons for the next harvest, then that parcel of wine will get an extra sulfur dosing. Because once we take it off lees, we usually give the sulfur, a sulfur dose. But I would say 80% of Retromarcia only gets 1 dose when we were blending it pre-bottling, whereas the 20% that we had to move before the harvest would have gotten two additions. Whereas our reservas usually will get 2 additions as well, because they will get moved out for harvest as well, moved to a different place. So they usually get 2, and they do 24 months in Botti Grande. So 1 year on the fine lees and then 1 year without. So if I could, I probably would leave them 2 years, but I just don't have, logistically can't do it.
The real estate is a problem, even in Tuscany, no?
It is a problem. Space in our area is very expensive. It's very, very expensive.
You said you leave the skins even after fermentation.
Yes, yeah.
So which obviously triggers a question.
Yes.
How long does your fermentation take on average?
Fermentation, I would say on average is about 20 days. This year I had tanks that took 2 months to finish fermenting.
Holy
but
cow.
yeah, but we had our cellar got cold pretty quickly. So it was like the Mosel. We had like 10 degrees and just barely ticking along. But I would say—
How do you feel when that happens?
I feel pretty relaxed about it. I've never had a stuck ferment. I've never had any problems. So I don't worry about it. I think the post-maceration decision is again kind of like the stem decision. The way I think about post-maceration is leaving the skins on in the wine longer. You get a more polymerization. You get the tannins kind of coming together and becoming longer, less aggressive molecules and more weighty. So we have very, very acidic tannic Sangiovese in the first 6 months to a year. So this is a very important part of kind of integrating those in a natural, elegant way. So botti grandes and longer maceration are a big part of that. And the botti grande I started in 2004, but the long maceration took me a lot longer to figure out, and I did it in small amounts and slowly became something that we do with all the Sangiovese.
How long would you age the Retromarcia?
In general, it's 18 months, and 70% is in oak and 30% is in on-line concrete. So we do the non below on-line concrete, and then we do oak, used oak, and it's a nice way to bring out freshness in the total wine, but also just in basic ideas, I like I said before, I like large volumes. I don't like small volumes for high acid Sangiovese.
But sorry, how much bottle age would you suggest?
Oh, sorry, did you say bottle
age?
age?
18.
Oh, you say bottle age. Sorry, I apologize.
No, it's good. It's good.
Bottle age, you know, we often feel pressure to bottle a small amount and release early, because earlier than I would prefer, because it's a wine that we can't really afford to not have in the market. So sometimes we'll do a small bottling early in the next year. But my ideal would be a minimum of, let's say, ideally when you get to about 2 years after the harvest. So that means usually about 2 to 3 months in bottle. Then it starts to really come out of its shell. Sometimes, especially in more classic vintages, like I would say the 18 to me is very classic. It's got very perfumed, aromatic. 2017 was a bit warmer. 2015 was warmer. Those classic vintages tend to have a little bit more of a closed kind of shell first 2 or 3 months. And then they start coming out of their shell, and then we can see that people are starting to see what we're seeing, because then the sales start going a lot faster after those first 3 months. So yeah, but you know, I don't want to do anything to try to artificially make it more ready. It is what it is. So
Katja, do you have more questions? I mean, I could listen to you for hours.
Yes.
It might sound corny, but I admit it.
No, it's a pleasure. I very enjoy very much. And
I hope it's okay if we social media a little bit.
Sorry?
I hope it's okay if we social media a little bit about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is there any chance you can send us a couple of your photos here?
Yeah, I can send them all if you want, or I can send you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Michael, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but thank you so much. This was super insightful.
It was a great pleasure for me, and I look forward to meeting in person.
I hope so.
Coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we look forward to your visit.
Yeah.
If you ever have any questions, even just small questions, just shoot me a message or an email, and I'm always happy.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, great pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.